So you've been diagnosed with a mental health issue. So what do you do next? Hi, it's Esteem from the MindBody Project and welcome back to another video. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a part one. I'm going to talk about what is it that you're going to do if you have been diagnosed with a mental health issue. So there's two paths that I'm going to show you. One of them is a mainstream path. So I'm just going to explain what decisions you're actually making. I'm just going to go through it and make it a bit clearer. And then I'm going to, the next time on part two, I'm going to show you what you're going to do, say an alternative health path, and what are the options around there as well, and the differences between the two. So first of all, I'm going to show you the mainstream path. So this is what to expect when you're going for help, because a lot of people are going in to get some help and they're coming out very, very disappointed because they're putting a lot of reliance on these services. And I'm just going to tell you why it's such an issue at the moment, mental health, why it's such a problem, and what to expect from these services so you're not disappointed, and then so you've got more options as well in part two if you need to as well, because a lot of people get stuck. So the first thing I want to talk about is some of the stats and some of the resources that are put into mental health, because there is a lot of people with mental health issues. Now let's just go through some of the stats here. Right, in the UK we've got 66 million people living in the UK. Now apparently 1 in 6 have a diagnosis every single week, or sort of mental health problem every single week or every single year in the UK. So we're going to need a lot of resources to actually help that, because then that turns out to 11 million people in the UK who need help. Now, I'll check the stats for the IAP service, so that's improving access to psychological therapies. And they, in March 2016, they, doing the previous year's stats, they had helped 118,989. Yeah, so you can get these figures from the NHS website, just look up the IAP services. So 11 million people needed help, and 118,989 people were seen, and that's just from them. Obviously you've got the psychologists and other people as well, which help, so that'll bring that figure up a bit, but it's not nowhere near the 11 million people. Yeah, so that's essentially all the resources that we have in mental health, especially if you're not in secondary care at the minute. Yes, that's a lot of people that are not being seen to. Yeah, this is why the queues are so big. Now, the other problem as well as you've got a third of the workforce who have depression, anxiety or stress. Yet a third of all the workforce out there. That is, and carers, listen to this one, carers, depression. 55% of carers have depression, 78% of carers have anxiety, and 84% of carers have stress. Yeah, and that's a big field at the minute. It's a massive field. So that is the workforce in the UK at the moment. So that's how many other people, that's how many people need assistance. 49% are unable to tell their employer. So literally half the people who have these issues do not tell their employer, they just continue on, damaging themselves further. Yeah, making decisions. Remember, we're going to talk about this on the alternative health, but if you make a decision in a negative state, then that's not going to serve whoever you're working with and the employer very good. And there's some stats to show all of this as well, which I'm going to come on to later. You got 74% of those, so all the people who have the mental health issues, they're out of work. 74% of those are out of work for more than a year. Yeah, so this is how biggest problem, because people ain't getting that help. 11 million, 118,000, big problem. So I've said 1 in 6 experience depression and anxiety upper reach. So what the government are trying to do is they're trying to put in resources to help 18%. So 18% of all the people. They're a long way off that at the moment, but they're trying to get up to there, 18%, 15%. Now, that's 15% of people who actually need help. That's their target, trying to get those. Yeah. Of those, they're trying to target so they get 50% of recovery. So those people who all go in there. 50% of those, they're trying to get them to a recovery rate. So they a reliable recovery rate, that's what they call it. And this takes around about, you may have experienced this, it takes about 2 months, 3 months, in some cases 2 years to actually get seen. Yeah, so this takes that long to get seen. And because it takes that long to get seen, problems, they can't really see you for that period, a long period of time, till you fully need it. So the amount of time that you actually need it. So it's only, I think it's only 6 months they can see you for. No matter what condition you are in, it's 6 months, and then, right, you have to wait 6 months to be seen again. So no matter where you are in the actual, however you're getting on, if it's not finished by 6 months, then that's it. Sorry, we've got other people in the queue. That's the way it is. So when that happens, so what happens is you get seen, 53% of people relapse within the year. 53. So the people who they say they've helped, they target 50%, which they're not even getting to. They're close to. Some areas are doing over it, some areas are doing under it. So it's around about that. But of those 50% of people have recovered, within 1 year, back starting this whole process again. The whole thing again. You're going through all that again. So that is a big problem there, and 79% of those who relapse do it within 6 months. So you have to wait 6 months. So it's about another year in the process to be seen and dealt with again. And even then, that might not even work again, and you might relapse again. Now, I've had people say to me, they've given up with that. They said they can't get the help. They just can't get it. I've had people say to me, they've had a test or a test done, and they've said that they don't meet requirements. They're not in the they don't meet the requirements, because obviously they have to prioritize people, and if you don't meet the criteria, then they can't really see you. I'll explain that a bit later on in part 2. So that is what's happening, and look at these sessions, the amount of sessions that are happening, and I'll go through the sessions and what the MindBody project does in comparison to these. So on average, 3 to 48 sessions to deal with anxiety, 6 to 24 sessions to deal with phobia. I don't know what they're doing there, to be honest. Depression, 6 to 20 sessions, but relapse means you keep coming back, so you're going through this process again. Yeah, so a lot of the time people are being given drugs. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But what they give you, the reason why people struggle is because with CBT, which is the main thing that they use, CBT is good at helping you cope. It's good at helping you cope with situations. So in other words, you don't get so distressed. But what that does is essentially you're getting taught to live with the problem. Yeah, you're getting taught. So when the trigger goes off, you're taught what to do after you get angry, in other words, or after the fear comes. You're getting taught how to reduce it. Rather than stop it coming on in the first place, it's just, no, we're gonna, when this happens, when you get anxious, when you get depressed, when you get stressed, when you get fear, this is what you do, which helps you cope. It does help you cope, so it does relieve it, and there's evidence, and it's evidence-based as well to do that. Now, there's a difference between, and obviously psychology assumes there's something wrong with you, which I'll talk more about that when we do the alternative health, a different way of looking at it. Because if you're assuming something's wrong with someone, then you are going to find things wrong with them. Yeah, that's essentially, if there's always something wrong with someone, you can always find that. What about if there's something right with someone? What's good about them? What are they good at? Because that's where the resources lie, is the way I look at it. But we'll talk about more about that later. So you've got the evidence base. So you're looking at the evidence base. Well, what they're doing really is they're looking at, they're showing outcomes that you may necessarily don't want. Because when you do, the problem is when you work with an individual, they're going to have outcomes that they want to have. And this is the way that I look at the system. If I have a client, they're going to tell me what outcomes they want to have. But the way that it works with this, if you do evidence-based way, then it's like, no, we're going to dictate what outcomes, if the outcome's good or not. Because that's to see if it fits in with our key performance indicators. Yeah, now you're going to get feedback of the client, sure, but it may not necessarily be the things that you are after. Yeah, this is why a lot of people have dissatisfaction with the services that I've spoken to, and the same as Mind as well. Mind have got loads of research on this, by the way. Now, if I asked you, what is the 3 most important things to you? 3 most important things to you. What are you going to say? So think about it. 3 most important things. So you may say things like family. You may say career. You may say health. You may say personal development. You may say spiritual stuff. Yeah, you may say your home environment or your finances or entertainment or whatever, friends. So whatever you're going to say. But you're going to say that your values are up there, and if you ask people, they're going to say something similar. But when you do these studies or the key performance indicators, no one's going to say, yeah, my BMI is most important to me, or my blood pressure is most important to me. No one's going to say that. But that's what's important to the studies, because that's the only thing that you can measure. You can't really measure the values. But because they're erasing that as something to measure, then you're not really going to satisfy the person who you're working with. They're just not going to be satisfied. So you've got to remember that. So that's why you have a difference between what the person says, their experience of the situation, experience of how it's worked, and what the stats are going to show. Because the stats may show something brilliant, but if you're measuring things that people don't care about, then for them it's not worked. And that's why we go around and what I call is pretend helping people. As long as the stats look good, we pretend helping them. And it's not working, and we can see it's not working because there's more people having issues with it. So we need to sort this out. We need to start measuring in a way. Yes, it's going to be subjective, but you need to start bringing that into things, because if you don't, then you're going to be measuring things just because you can measure those things, and you're not actually going after the things that people care about. What else have I got on here? A lot of the research that we're doing as well is conscious-minded activities. The mainstream is about conscious-minded stuff. It's stuff that you can actually measure. It has to be conscious-minded. Whereas I believe that all the change, and this is the research as well, is that all change is unconscious. So you've got to do things unconsciously. It's great that you can measure things, and I think you should measure things that you can measure, but you have to take into account the unconscious mind, which is what is not really done here. And that's why you're getting a mixed, yeah, we're doing well, but then we're looking at the stats and everybody's getting worse. Now, people say, when you look at the mainstream service, they are looking at value for money. They're looking at what they can do. Yeah, they're looking at what resources. Well, these are the resources we have available. We can only help this amount of people. Guys, you're going to have to do things yourself. Now, if you're waiting on using these services, then what you have to understand is that you are going to pay. You're either going to pay with time or you're going to pay with money. If you're not paying with money, which is probably what you'd have to do with the alternative services, health, then you're paying with time. And we've already seen that some people are doing 2 years before they even get an appointment. Some people are like waiting in this mess, and they're going through this, but they're going through it and time. How much is your time worth? What could you be doing? Rather than spending a year doing this, what else could you be doing with your time? How much is it worth to you? Because you could be, yes, you could do this, hey, it's free, and sometimes people, that's all they've got. But I'm going to come up with a strategy in part 2 for that, to deal with that. But that's what people have. But that's the only option that they have. They think they have, because there are other free options, by the way. And as I said, this is teaching, the whole of this system is teaching you to live with the problem. So the mainstream is teaching you to live with the problem, because then they can sell you more drugs. The drug company, it works out well for the drug companies. Yeah, I'm sure there are people at the drug companies trying to help you and trying to do things the right way, but it does make them a profit if you're on the drugs for the rest of your life, because you're a customer for life. As I said, there's limited resources per person, so that's the way that I have to look at it. There are only limited resources, so you have to start taking some responsibility here. You can't rely on them to do everything. You can't rely on the NHS for everything. They're doing their best. Yeah, that's the resources that we have. So you have to start doing your bit and start taking care of yourself and start doing things that serve you well, rather than just doing whatever you want and then, hey, look after me. Now you've got to start taking responsibility as well. In the future, how is this going to play out? In the future, there are going to be longer queues. There are going to be more people. And I know that we have mentioned in the budget a new mental health service, and that's going to ease the pressure a little bit, especially the 24-hour system. But if we're still using the same system, whereas it's teaching people to live with the problem, if we're still doing that, as that's a method, rather than, hey, let's eliminate the problem so it can't come back, which is what I do, by the way, then if you're not doing that, then you are just going to build up a load of other people. It will release the pressure initially, but later down the line it's just going to go to the same again. So we need to start getting rid of the problems now, rather than teaching people to live with the problems, because they'll just relapse. People are having to travel further away to get free help. People are travelling seen some people yesterday who are travelling from Gloucestershire to Nottingham to come and get help. They're having to do that, and people have been transferred from the CAMS service, so that's the Children and Adolescent Service, Mental Health Service. So they're having to travel because their beds are filled up, and they're having to travel like across the country to actually go and get some help. This is what this is at the moment. This is getting ridiculous. So we need to start doing it. But like, as I said, time versus money. Because how much time is this costing you? How much money are you losing from spending so much time doing this? And how much? Just think about what you could be doing with your time instead. In fact, there's a question to ask yourself: what would you be doing with the time? Once this problem's out of the way, what were you going to be doing with your time? So you need to think about that. It needs to be planned. You need to, right, once this is gone, then I'm going to be doing this. You need to have that. Employers. So if you're an employer, how much is this costing you? Yeah, a third of your workforce, approximately, mental health issues. How much is that costing you? How much time off to people? How much is that costing you? It costs a lot of money to people. Let me just go through some. I'll go through some stats later, actually, regarding. In fact, no, I'll do it now. So there's been some research. So some of the Fortune 500 companies, so they've seen all of these stats. They've seen these and they've taken some action. The big companies are seeing these stats and they're doing something about it. So what they're doing is they're investing heavily into the workforce to making sure that they're dealing with these issues. And what they've researched is that there's one firm who invested in coaching, so invested in what I do, so the coaching side. Invested in coaching. At every $1 they spent, they made $7.90 back for investing in people's health and mental well-being. And a load of others do. So another firm reported a 529% return in investment. So if you're an employer out there, you investing, rather than this is a cost, you investing into your employees to get this down is actually going to make you money. So you invest in it, you're actually going to make money from doing it. Especially if you're a big firm, you've got a massive workforce. So rather than looking at it as a cost, look at it as an investment. It's actually, you spend this amount, you spend one, and in this case, it's a brilliant one, $1, and they're getting $7.90 back. So you're actually making money from doing it. And having a happier workforce, productivity, and all of that as well. And there's another survey in Manchester Inc. of 100 executives found that coaching provided, on average, a return of investment of almost 6 times the cost of the coaching. So you're getting it back. You're actually making money from it because people are better. Resources and things are better. Once you start investing to take care of this, then you're going to make your money back. And as I said, 6 times, 529% increase, percent return on investment, and $7.90 per pound. So it's quite a lot of money you're going to actually make on it. A couple more points then, and then I'm finished with part 1. So a lot of people like strictly using science-based stuff on humans, especially with behaviour. 1, because I believe it's safe, and 2, because it works. Yeah, so when it's science-based. The problem is when I look at the science-based that we have on humans, what they're doing is they're trying to split the body up. They're trying to still split the body up. They still believe there's such a thing as mental health. And there's just not. We know that there's not. Why? Because neurotransmitters go from every single area of the body. Yeah, your brain literally affects everything that you do. Your body, your mind affects your body affects your mind. Yes, through neurotransmitters. So we've known that since what, 1980s? So we shouldn't really be splitting the body up that way. It doesn't work. Yeah, the body doesn't work in that way. Look up something called What the Bleep. So look up that DVD, What the Bleep. You may be able to look on YouTube actually. But the brain and the body doesn't work that way. So when you're saying mental health, then you are doing something based off something that doesn't really work. The body is a system. It runs in systems. So whatever you do here is going to affect here. But you need to know how it affects there. When you say mental health as well, what you've got to realise is the gut near enough has its own, it operates independently as well as in the system of the body. The same with the heart. So they're running independently, so they're doing things differently. So you're missing out on actually being able to help someone properly. If you're sitting there going, well, no, we've tested, we've done talking stuff with them, and they said this, this, and this, and we interpreted it this way. That's just not going to work. So it may look good on paper, but when you test things and do it in reality, which I have, then you find that it doesn't work purely because they've tried to split the body up into bits, and the body always works as a system. So as soon as you try to split the body up, bam, your whole thing for me is gone. And yet it can look valid when it comes to working in a lab environment. But that's not how people operate in a real world scenario, and you've got to take it there. So that for me is why it's always mind body health. It's not mental health anymore. If you're still thinking it's mental health, then what you're ignoring a big part of what could be the problem. And it usually is. It's usually your physiology that's affecting your brain. And there's studies upon studies upon studies upon studies. Not only the studies, science, but when you test it, like I have, then it confirms it. And that's the thing with science at the moment, especially with the human body, you should be able to test things out. If they're saying that certain thing happens, then test it. Try it out. And I mean strictly as if it were true. You've got to suspend your beliefs, put them to the side, which is what I do, and go, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to fully go for it, expecting it's going to happen. Go for it and see what happens. If you do that for a few years, about everything that comes along, one, you're not going to be confused, and two, you're going to know what works and what doesn't work. But what I found, and you can test this yourself, is that if you're not looking after, if you're having where you've been labelled as a mental health issue, and you've not looked at what your physical activity, what you're drinking, what you're eating, how much you're breathing techniques, if you haven't looked at all of those, then for me, you've just neglected probably 90% of the problem. So you need to be dealing with that. So, but we're going to talk more about that on the alternative health, so on part 2. So thanks for paying attention. So part 2 is going to come up with the other options that you can do if you do not want to go through this system here. Just to point out that people who work in the NHS are absolutely brilliant, and they're doing the best that they can with the resources that they're given, but they're not given all the resources. So it isn't the frontline workers, it's not their fault. You have to take responsibility for your health as well. You have to take responsibility. It's up to you. Yes, they are there to assist you and facilitate the change, but you have to take responsibility, especially for your physical health. And a lot of people with mental health issues or mind body health issues are not doing their part. So you have to take your part as well. So let's go on to part 2.